Hi. Why make sculpture? I make sculpture because I want to say something about the world. I want to say something about the way in which nature and mankind have evolved and worked together, sometimes not worked together, and to make work which can comment upon the way in which human behaviour and natural behaviour have run alongside of each other. And that involves politics, it involves astronomy, geology, biology. It involves knowing something and feeling something about the world and wanting to say something about it. It also involves that sort of desire to make things. And I've had that all of my life. And I'm very excited about being in the project in Sweden at Orgoba, because at the core of the idea is one to do with, in a sense, thinking about the world and trying to realise that such enormous subjects like the futility of war, I mean, by no means does my work try to solve all those problems. It would be so silly and cliched to do so. But it's a primary desire of mine, and I think of all the other artists that are taking part in the project, that you really want to signal in your work through materiality or subject or humour, but through some way and device, you really want to talk about the politics of the world and the sort of the way in which nations and peoples and cultures have at times been at war. And you know, we're looking back, we're looking sideways, we're looking at the current events, and I think that you need to have a willingness to make something in sculpture, to be able to comment on some of those events. And you can't, it's like a Rupert Brooke poem or a Paul Nash painting. There may be things within an idea that any of the artists make, I'm sure, and certainly speaking for myself, that touches upon some of those fundamental issues to do with peace. And it's an all-encompassing statement, and it's, you know, in some senses really quite problematic to deal with. But the intention is to make sculpture that is really profound and signals strong feelings about some of those issues. I know I'm putting it in a little bit of a sort of clunky way, but one of the main reasons why I made this work, Dove of Peace, essentially it's a paper aeroplane. It's something that references things we all do in our lives, you know, when we're maybe in the classroom or when we were growing up, where we would have made something with paper. And paper has a sort of universal medium and meaning. It can appear to be worthless, but yet everything from the Bible to our banknotes are printed upon it, and so it has all sorts of different senses of value. And I would hope that one of the important things that I feel that my work deals with is the sense of value. And of course, the audience will always complete the work, there's no doubt about that, but I think one of the main things that's run continuously through all of my ideas is a desire to combine my feelings for the way in which mankind has organised itself, whether it's politically, socially, culturally, and how it has reacted with nature, and these concerns are obviously all in our thinking currently about the way we waste things and have done for many years. And you know, we need to be more, not just more caring, but understanding of the materials and the what we're actually doing with the earth, because everything essentially comes from the earth. And what are we doing with it? How is it behaving? What are we manufacturing with it? And then once it's manufactured, what happens out to it afterwards? In many ways, my practice has dealt with lots of issues around the manufactured world and its impact upon nature. And at the core of this project, the Peace Monuments Project, is one that needs to balance these sensitivities and to be able to place them in your work without it sounding corny, without it sounding cliched and overstated and literal. You've got to try and think about how the subject and the material can be manipulated in such a way to make it very strong, because you know, if you look at it historically, certainly through the modernist period, how have monuments, and particularly ones which reference the war, how have they been organised? I mean, it's not that long ago, and the portrayal of generals and nobility was the central focus, and you know, it's certainly switched through you know, through the last 50 years about how we deal with that subject. And there are many good examples of how artists have dealt with the subject of war and how they've positioned it in their work. In some ways, it's almost like describing romanticism. You need to go to the opposite, classicism, to be able to say something about romanticism. And in a sense, you could take examples like Picasso and Matisse, Brancusi, very significant artists that have influenced pretty much all of our contemporary thinking, who never painted the war, in not the Second World War. Of course, the very famous example of Guernica with Picasso is a very significant example, but they mostly didn't paint the war. There are no direct paintings of the war. There are no sculptures which portray the war. But what they do is they talk sometimes in a very silent way about the mood or the possibly the political thinking, but through shape and form and context and scale and colour, they took on the challenge of dealing with war in a way which was almost from a very distant position, but actually one which wasn't distant. It actually spoke a great deal about the war because they were so removed from it in their artwork. And if you look at you know, these painters, artists throughout you know, the First and Second World War and onwards, where there are other wars, unless you've commissioned somebody to actually make something about the war, they have made work which has concerned them, but in a sort of roundabout way, they've commented upon the socio-political issues of the time through colour, shape, and other such things, and how they organised their work. Industrialisation, of course, has played a very strong and major role throughout all of that. You know, and it could be argued, you know, that the futurists echoed a lot of those concerns. And it comes out in poems, it comes out in plays and operas and all such things. But to actually just directly reference the war is something that a lot of artists have steered clear from. They've stood away from that and they've talked about those socio-political issues by positioning themselves apparently at a distance, but actually speaking about the subject because of the way in which they've dealt with subject and materiality and context. And you know, I certainly want all of these sort of thoughts to be in my mind when I come to Sweden, and to look at the place and look at what Richard and everybody has collected, and to think about how and what I will be making. I think I've certainly had ideas, and I've made some drawings which you know, I've sketched out and everything, but in a sense I'm almost waiting to get to Sweden to react in a very different way. When I get there, to look at what's available, to think about time, which is crucial of course, what's possible, and the materials, and you know, all such things related to that. So it's going to be a fascinating time, absolutely fascinating, bringing together all of those 15 artists from around the world to see what they come up with. It'll be a real privilege and a pleasure to work alongside some of these people, and we'll see what comes out. It could be something that actually develops and develops into the future. We'll have to see what happens, and I'll be bringing my own ideas to the table in a sense, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, cheers.